good job at the time, and then you reach puberty and you figure that for me that's not an option. So after I got rid of that notion, I just knew I wanted to be a race caller. I had no other desire to do anything else, and I basically, in my working life, didn't do anything other than that. I worked in a golf club factory for about a year, and I was actually selling golf clubs, and I wasn't very good at sales because I couldn't see the morality in selling something for more than what it cost to make. Makes for a very bad salesman. So anyway, my buddy Jim Forrett is hitchhiking. This all goes to the point of how hard it is to get a job. My buddy Jim Forrett's hitchhiking from Chicago. I was going to school in Green Bay back in 1971. People actually hitchhiked, and this guy picked him up, and they started talking back and forth. And turns out the guy ran these county fairs in Wisconsin, and Jim liked the horses, and and they just started talking back and forth. And this guy, Marty Halbrecker, ran the thing, said, "Oh yeah, I call the races there, but I don't want to do that." And my friend Jim says, "Oh, my buddy Tom Durkin, he's the assistant announcer at Arlington Park." There was no such thing as an assistant announcer at Arlington Park, and it certainly wasn't me. And so he goes, "Tom wants to kind of get out on his own, make a name for himself. And he might consider calling those races." And he said, "Okay, have him give me a call, it'd be great." So Ford tells me, "I got you a job calling county fair races in Wisconsin." The purses were $200, $300. To be kind, to say they were mixed breeds. But anyway, so I go to the Fond du Lac County Fair on May 29th, 1971. Jim doesn't tell me this gambit about me being the assistant announcer at Arlington Park, and I'm announced to the crowd as Tom Durkin, the assistant announcer at Arlington. Okay. And I called my first race, which was a 200-yard race by a horse that they called Brownie. I'm pretty sure he didn't have any papers. But to the point, I probably would not be talking to you here today, or certainly have had a 43-year career of racing, if it hadn't been for that serendipity of a friend of mine getting picked up on a highway in Wisconsin. If I had zero introduction to racing, I knew no buddy in racing. I'm not a horse-friendly person. I'm allergic to horses. I've never been near them. And this has just been a gigantic stroke of luck. And I think you'll find that most announcers are going to have that kind of luck story. And the rate of job loss in announcers is like zero. I held the same job in New York for 23 years. And what happens is about every 20 years, the guys at the top get old like me, and they move out. And then the next tier of guys, the Larry Colmuses, move in. And then those guys that, the Frank Miramattis, move into the Larry Colmuses spot. And then some guy who's going to be, maybe his uncle owned a racetrack or something, is going to move into these lower level spots and blah, 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 blah. So I caution you not to get any great high expectations about walking into the announcer's booth. I thought that I could get a job calling races. Now, I did that county fair thing for 4 years and weekends when I was in college. And, I'd sent my tapes to every track in the country and got no responses. Some guy, And I figured the only way I could probably get a job calling races was to be there and the announcer gets sick and I can run up and call the races, which is exactly how Dave Johnson got his start. Dave Johnson, one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest ever. Cahokia Downs used to go to the track, blah, blah, hang out, and Todd Creed was the announcer. Got so drunk that night he couldn't call the races, and they actually went on the public address system and said, anybody want to come up? And Dave Johnson goes, and then Dave Johnson's born. So it's stuff like that. So try your best, do your best. I got a job. Happened to be the guy. There was a guy across the street from my brother-in-law who was an editor for the Racing Forum, and my brother-in-law always knew I wanted to work at the track or whatever. So I got a job at Thistledown in Ohio as a call taker for the forum. I was then transferred to East St. Louis, Illinois, to Cahokia Downs, and I was the call taker. That's the guy that jots down what the track man, he's the guy that makes the charts. So, and then I got to know the general manager, whatever, and heard one day that down in the racing office that they were looking for an announcer in Tampa Bay Downs. I sent him the tape, got hired, and that was that. But it's really, really a hard thing to do. Again, I don't want to set your expectations high, but if you want it, go for it. I'm so happy in my life right now that that guy got picked up. It has been a self-actualization. It's something that, I had a lot of stuff going for me that allowed me to be an announcer. First of all, I'm Irish, and we love to talk. Second of all, I was born in Chicago. Now, I had a Chicago accent, I must admit, but I kind of got away from it as I became an announcer a little bit later on. Accents you can kind of soften up a little bit. But if I was from Brooklyn and had a real bad Brooklyn accent, I probably not have been an announcer. So I had that Midwest flat nasal tone going for me. My parents insisted that I be educated well, despite my efforts not to accept it, and that was really, really important. And I was the youngest kid in the family, and my parents weren't around a lot. My dad was sick much of the time. My mom had to leave, and so I needed attention. So that's how you become the class clown, and that's how I feel so completely at ease in front of you today. So a lot of this stuff, these are the building blocks that everybody's different, of course, but there's something there that leads you down this path to something that you really, really want to do. And you have to have good vision, and you have to have a good speaking voice. So that's just to set you up as far as how to get to the announcer's booth, which a few of you will be doing today. One thing I also want you to take away from this is the ability, such as I'm doing to you right now, to make a presentation. I don't care what you do in life. If you don't become a racetrack announcer, at least today, you're going to take away some basics about making a presentation to people. Everybody does it, sooner or later. I don't care what your job is. You're going to have to get up and speak to people in some way, make presentations. Everything that race callers do can be boiled down to something like that. Of course, there's many, many different technical things here that come into play for race calling. And the three pieces of advice that I'm going to give you. First of all, read. Read. I have a very good vocabulary, and it comes from reading. I don't care what you read, just read. And if you don't know a word, look it up. Well, computers are so good to read now. These, particularly the New York Times, they don't dumb you down at all. And you come across a word. Yesterday, rapacious comes up. I don't know. You just look it up, and then you click on it, and then there's 5 different words you can use for rapacious, greedy, or avaricious, or whatever. So just read, and I'll get into a little bit about how reading plays into race calling. And the next thing is energy. And the next thing after that is energy. Energy, energy, energy. I just can't drill that enough into your head about even saying that word energy. I'm starting to really feel it. And you have to have energy. In any presentation you make, race calling, you just have to have energy. I was an actor in college. That helped quite a bit. It saved me, actually, academically, because I had no interest in learning in college. I was John Belushi in Animal House. I was a crazy man. And in order to stay in school, somebody said try out for a play. I did. got a lot of acting roles, and that's another reason why I'm so completely comfortable in front of you. But my teacher, Kelly Collum, just drilled that energy, and from energy comes creative energy, and from that creative energy comes new words, new ideas, different ways to try to explain things. It's brown horses running around in a circle. You can make that really, really exciting or important, but you can't do it unless you have energy. By the way, please raise your hand at any time. Don't even raise your hand, just scream out. Any questions, anytime, any subject, lay it on me. So, I want you to pick up this printout that we've given you. I hope you have it. It says Ken Workington's horse racing announcing course. And Al, could you get a glass of water or a bottle of water or something like that? Or, good. Oh, excellent. Do you have any Budweiser? Fine. This is a very, very comprehensive, detailed missive about, look up missive, it's a hell of a word, or opus. This was, how long was this course, Ellen?
I left the Meadowlands almost 21 years ago. It was prior to that, so it was 22 or 3
No,
years
not
ago.
how old, how long was the course?
3 or 4 weeks.
3 or 4 weeks, okay.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try to dissolve this into 3 hours today. But this is a very good thing for you just to follow along, take notes, and what have you. Again, it is extremely detailed. There are other handouts you have. One is called Rhetoric. The other is Bad Weather. Let's see. Plot and Narrative. These were essays I wrote to myself. These are only 3. I have maybe 20. And these were things that I wrote to myself as part of a creative process, and just to put down into words. And so I just started thinking about stuff, and as they came into my mind, and then I made them actual formal essays to myself that I would refer to from time to time. And when I refer to these things, think, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, and then when you work on it, then you could come up with another idea. Just this creative process. It's not explainable. It's inexplicable. But the creative process is something that comes from within you. But you have to have those building blocks. And again, that building block is reading, and it starts the ball rolling of reading and thinking, and then looking at things differently. I read a book about music, and I got all sorts of ideas about race calling. It was called Understanding Music by, who's that Talking Heads guy? David Burns, yeah. Very smart guy. And it was explaining music, or how music works. And the first half of the book was very interesting about the science behind music. And then the second half was just a rant about people ripping off artists. But again, you never know where this inspiration is going to come from. I read a book about the power of habit. Power of habit, and it completely reformed my way of how to memorize horses, and it detailed how the brain works in memorization. I'll touch on that in a little bit. But anyway, just keep these. If I have time, we'll get down to them. But they're very self-explanatory and deal with just a couple subjects. Like I said, I've probably got about 20 of them. But actually, none of them were ever meant for publication. I think I could probably publish some of those if I chose to. Okay, so let's get to Ken's work, which is, he put in so much time in here. Okay, so let's go to page 2, Tools of the Trade, binoculars. I'm going to tell you about binoculars. So one of you have a pair of binoculars, is that right? Does it have any numbers on the side? These are Nikon, good. And there are numbers over here that say 10, X, 50. Okay? All right. Anytime you get a pair of binoculars, there's going to be a number. We'll just take those. 10x 50. The first number is the magnification of the glass. Okay? When you look through that glass, that's going to show you an image that is 10 times bigger than normal. What do you have here? What does this say? 8 by 25. Okay, I'll give them back to you. Don't worry about it. 8 by 25. Okay, so here are the 8 by 25s. That first number is the magnification. So his glasses, the 10s, are going to show you that image that's going to be 10 times. This is going to show you the image that is 8 times. Bigger is not always better, and I'll get to that in just a second. The second number, 50, and this number is 25. 50 is the circumference of the out lens in centimeters. These are 50 centimeters in circumference. I think that's the correct term. These are 25, obviously. Okay, so the bigger that number, the more light is going to be able to get into the image, just because it's bigger. So you want to have light. Now, these particular binoculars would probably work extremely well at this track here. These, okay. At nighttime, you would like to have that bigger lens. Now, these are mine. These are big mothers. These are 15 by, I think they're 50s or 60s. So 15 for these. Now, let a lot of light in. Put here. Tell me the biggest difference between your binoculars and these. Go ahead, pick them up. Don't look through them, just pick them up. What's the biggest difference?
Weight. This
Thank
is
you
much
very
heavier.
Much heavier. Now, this is a terrible binocular to use. By the way, they're $1,200, so it's the Canon image stabilizer. More about that in a second. But this is a terrible binocular to use at this track. The biggest problem, well, there are a couple problems. I know you're going to want to think, oh, I'll just get the most powerful binoculars I can. Not a good idea. The only reason I have these 15 power babies is because I worked at Belmont Park. Couple things about this number. Why you don't want it, why bigger is not better. The bigger that image, the smaller your field of view. I'll take a look right now across the way here. Okay, with these I can see about 4.5 lengths in my view. With these, about 10. So, if you're calling a race and you can only get, that field of view that's so narrow, it's not going to work for you at a half-mile track. At Belmont, when I look at that, okay, Belmont I look at on the backstretch with those, I can see 20 lengths, but the horses are this big. These, I can see, I don't know, 8 maybe, or 9, but the horses are a good size. Other big problem, weight. And the other big problem with magnification is, you got it down there, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. What kind of glasses do you have?
These are Nikon 10 by 50s.
10 by 50. The bigger that image, if you just move your hands a little bit, that image is going to go, whoa! If you got the smaller image, you got a lot of wiggle way there, and it's not going to, things aren't going to go crazy on you. So, when I first got the job at Belmont Park, I needed a pair of 15 power binoculars. So I had a harness made, sort of like this. Let me this is for holding the program, but I'll show you. And I saw Bob Dylan playing the guitar and the harmonica at the same time. He had this gadget, and so I figured, oh yeah, I had to have something that stabilized this. Because especially for the big races, I'm sorry, you know. And so actually, I knew that was coming for when I did my first Breeders' Cup in 1984. So I got that idea, and I had this thing fashioned, and I put my, at that time, 10-power binoculars on there, and stabilized it pretty good. The problem with it was, when I was breathing, go like that. But it stabilized it pretty well. I stopped using those when I got these binoculars. These binoculars, again, they're very expensive. They're image stabilized. They're batteries that go in here, and it stabilizes the image. So you can go like this, and it's like a gyroscope, and it'll keep these glasses very, very steady. So again, bigger is not better with the glasses. Again, and don't spend a lot of money. I mean, I spent $1,200 on these, and no need to. An eraser, thank you.
Okay.
I was going to use spit in hand, but that's good. And then again, field of view is the other thing that you really want over here. So most of the glasses will have a field of view. It's also called an out angle. And again, no need to spend a lot of money on binoculars. And if you're certainly a casual, and the other thing too about being a casual fan, I went to the Belmont yesterday. I couldn't stay to watch the race. I left because I had to be prepared. But
Yeah.
I went to the Belmont, 23 Belmonts in a row, and I walk out of there, and what happens? A freaking guy wins a triple. And I'm listening to while I'm in a traffic jam on 87 on the radio. Some other guy's calling it. Jesus Christ. Walks into the booth first time, boom, he gets a triple. I'm standing there in a traffic jam. But these are really heavy to carry around all day, and if you're just being a casual fan, James knows that you have worked just fine. What did I do with this? Okay.
What did you think of his call yesterday?
It really sucked. It was very good. Very good. Hit all the right notes. Racing program and for markers and highlighters. Okay.
There's programs up here.
Yeah.
These are the.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
You take those.
You want?
Okay, here is, that's fine, I don't need it
Don't
right
need
now.
it? Okay.
Yeah. This is my first call for the Kentucky Derby. And the program was so big that I had to fashion my own, cutting down the names around like 2 or 3 pages of the program, because there were, in this case, 17 horses. And next to those names, well, this is very convenient this time. In the program, they actually had the colors that the jockeys wear. That's how you memorize. You memorize the colors. If you actually, why don't you turn to your programs if you
Does
want.
anybody not have a program?
Yeah. And so, harness racing, obviously different than thoroughbred racing. In thoroughbred racing, the jockeys wear the colors of the owners. Harness racing, 99% of the time, the drivers wear their own colors. I always thought that calling harness races was much harder than calling thoroughbred races. Harness horses move twice in a race. The really good ones maybe 3 times. Thoroughbreds have 1 3-furlong run if it's that long. There's much more change of position in harness races. You don't think that because they're in single file, but there's a lot more movement in a harness race than thoroughbred racing. Again, they just make that one move. Where you get past in a thoroughbred race, well, you're done. Pass in a harness race, well, wait until they go around one more time. So, in that respect, but the other, in terms of memorizing, is like, okay, so John Campbell comes out with white and maroon for the first race, and he's on Joe Lobel. Fine. That's easy enough for me. I look at your face, that's James. Very good. I look at that yellow, or that white and maroon, that's John Campbell, and that's Joe Lobel. Next race comes out. Here's James's face. but the horse's name is Kip Lobel. I can do that. I don't know, it was Joe Lobel, that face, and now it's Kip. Third race. James's face, maroon and white, means Tom Lobel. Joe, Tom, Kip. Next comes out, fourth race, John Campbell again, his face, and now that face is Richard. Now, and I keep on seeing his face, but James, Richard, Kip. So as the night goes on, you've got these same repetitive drivers. Your mind it's just filled with stuff. So think of a gallon jug, and so you've got these flexible, spongy balls. And so the first race, okay, that space is your brain. Okay, so you put that ball and it expands, and that ball is this big. Okay, now the second race comes around. You got to get two of those balls in there. Okay, so that ball is now this big, and then the third race, and by the last race, those balls are this big. That's the part that's going to take up the measurement of your brain. Now, when it fills up your whole brain, it's pretty easy. When it's that much part of your brain, it gets harder. Memorizing horses gets much more difficult as the day goes on. It used to take me 10 horse field, first race of the day at Belmont Park, 2 minutes. 10th race of the day at Belmont Park, 8 minutes of really, really hard memorization. And that's why I went ball. So this is just an example of the coloring. Now, we have the colors on there for you. I'm sorry, Ellen, I got it.
There's markers up there.
Okay. So, let's see. You got color
Here
marker?
you go, right here.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Oh, that'll work on this board here, right?
I think
So,
anybody not have markers?
I don't know.
well, let's just see here. Let's just go with some colors I know. Next to that horse's name, let's say Octavate, and just for fun's sake, let's say it's John Campbell. So John Campbell's colors are like this, and something like this. This is the white, and this is the yoke. These are the stripes down the back, and there's some decoration on the side. And then, let's say Billy Houghton. His were green. I just do a little green next to the horse's name. There's a yellow yoke there, yellow stripes down, and whatever. And I put those right next to the horse's name. Now, why? I use this. This is one of the great inventions of my life. It is made of the three most important elements in construction. A clothes hanger, the cardboard paper you get from the Chinese laundry in the back of your shirts, and duck or masking tape. Simple enough. Just put it on like this and clip. There's a little clip here, and just clip it in front of me. So, calling the race, blah, 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 and as will happen, almost in every race, that name doesn't come immediately to mind, and I just go down, look down, oh, there's, okay, but I can see brown, okay, there's that brown, that's Octavate, okay, blah, 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 blah. And so you can use the colors to refer to who the horses are and who their drivers are. Also in harness racing, harness racing and thoroughbred racing both have saddle pads. Thoroughbred racing, I probably couldn't even tell you. I know there's red, white, blue, yellow, green, 6 is black. After that, I'm not exactly sure.
Orange is 7 is orange, 8 is pink,
7 is orange, 8 is pink,
9 turquoise.
9 is turquoise, okay. Is that thoroughbred or harness?
That's thoroughbred.
Thoroughbred, okay. I pay no attention to them, none whatsoever, because in thoroughbred racing, those horses run next to each other, okay? And you're over here, and there's frosted on the outside of American Pharoah, and if those jockeys are together, you cannot see the saddle pads on the thoroughbred horse. Harness racing you can because they're that much more separation between them. Except if they go 3 wide, then it can become a little difficult. So that's why I always memorize the colors of the harness drivers as well as the saddle pad numbers. And I know some announcers, some harness announcers don't even memorize. Don't even memorize at all. They'll just have the program out, and some don't even use binoculars, and some have tri-mount tracks. So just, yeah, and yeah.
I've never used binoculars in my life.
Yeah,
I mean,
We call it a half-mile track.
half-mile track, I might have to on a bigger track, but.
yeah. Oh, you'd have to on a bigger track, but half-mile track, yeah, you'd, not really completely necessary. I would use them because you can see what the drivers are doing a little bit better, what they're doing with their hands. And I'll get into a minute about horses' ears and things like that. But I don't think you can pick up horses' ears without binoculars on a half-mile track. Maybe you can, I don't know. Oh yeah, the colors. So anyway, that's really basic stuff about what you should do as far as the colors go. And again, harness racing, I always usually at the end of the day in the harness racing, when calling harness races, I almost had to go to those saddle pads because it's really, really hard. But I thought I was a good harness announcer because I really worked at memorizing those colors. And again, they change, use the same color, it changes from race to race.
What if the weather's bad? I mean, how do you follow it? Do you look at the TV if it's thoroughbreds? I mean, how do you?
4th and 10, you punt.
Yeah.
I've got a whole section. As a matter of fact, is there a thing about mud?
Yeah.
Weather. Okay, there's a whole. I wrote a little essay about that. If we have time, we'll get back to it. But yeah, with the mud, harness is much easier because the drivers are a little bit farther back, and you can use those saddle pads in a harness. Fog, there's nothing you can do except look at a monitor, because sometimes they'll have the different cameras placed around the track, and if you have anybody that's halfway smart in the TV truck, they'll show those head-on shots, and you can pick it up from there. But if there's fog, you can make light of it. Backing up, we were talking about what do you? And with the wet. In thoroughbred racing, the jockeys are down like this, and so and it's okay when they're on the side, but when they turn for home, you're looking at them head on, okay? And what you're going to see is mud. Horse's face is full of mud, except for the front runner. Horse's face is full of mud. The top of that jockey's cap is full of mud. His arms are full of mud, and you can't see his back. So you have to get a mental picture before they make that turn into the stretch, come at you. That's where mistakes are really easily made. At the top of the stretch, when you make that turn in and you're looking head on at them, that's the easiest place to make a mistake. So what I always did was to take a mental picture of those first few horses right outside the quarter pole before they made the turn, as well as harness racing, same deal. Harness racing, though, you can see the drivers a little bit more because they're farther back. They're not on top of the horse. But, so just imagine, when they're making that turn from the top of the stretch in like this, you want to get at this point, right over here, you want to take a photograph and try to keep it, that's not going to, I guess we should have used the black, shouldn't we? Dope! So, see, I would have been a very bad teacher. Okay, any more questions while we're still rolling along here?
What about gear? Could you memorize if a horse has a white bridle or a shadow
Yes.
or pigmentation? If a horse has a blaze or
Yeah, I'll certainly get into that, but we'll handle it right now. Love gray horses. That's a freebie. Except when you have two. It's like my sister, she goes to the track, always bets on the gray horse, but she sees a gray horse, I gotta go bet. Well, stick around to see them all, and then the gray horse wins. I go, no, Bethan, you've been on the 3 horse. The gray horse, the other gray horse didn't come out on the track yet. So, gray horses are really, really good. And again, you memorize the silks, and then after that, you go to other stuff. Blinkers are great. blinkers are really, really great. And again, when I did my markup, let's say, I've got John Campbell here, that's John Campbell, and then the horse is wearing green blinkers, so I would put that mark on the side there like that. Blinkers are very good, that's your second line. Hats are probably the third. They're generally in consort with the colors that the jockeys, the drivers have. And then, give you an example. The Derby that I screwed up with Mind That Bird, the Windstar Farm.
Not that you ever think about that.
Only around 3 o'clock every morning. So there were, Windstar Farm had 5 horses in that Kentucky Derby. There were 20 horses in the race. 5 of them were from Windstar Farm. White cap, white silks with a little green mark on the back you couldn't see. Great. So I called up the director of racing there, Donnie Richardson, whom I hate, and I said, we got 5 horses from Windstar Farm. To make sure we put different color caps on them, and where it goes, well, I can't do that. What? I mean, they're 5, they're the same colors, and they're all going to be. He goes, well, I can't. A guy, guy who's going to run his horse in the Derby. I said, well, we'll call him up and whatever. And so, he calls me back a couple hours later. Says, no, can't do that. Horse has got to run in his colors now. I said, Secretariat ran with angle light. Secretariat had a white cap and angle light had a blue cap. No, man's got to run his horse in the Derby. He's got to ride his own colors. So I got 5 horses wearing the same silks. It's a 20-horse field. So one of the horses had blinkers, white blinkers. So that, okay. And then the only way to distinguish the other ones, they're all bay or dark brown, was one didn't have any markings on his face, one had a diamond, and one had a blaze. Well, you tell me how to pick that out a half a mile away from you when there's 19 other horses around him. Good luck with that. So that Derby, I almost knew I was going to screw up because I went in with such a defensive attitude, like don't even think about doing anything. You just have to keep track of all 5 of those horses. And when Mind That Bird came up the inside, I was looking for the other 4. And so anyway, the next year, Windstar has 4 horses in the Derby. By the way, the last Derby I called. And did a little end around, called the owner up, Bill Kasner, and said, Bill, I ran 5 horses last year, 4. Is there any way you can put on any possible? I mean, real, just not for me, but for the Benny. But he goes, well, of course. Why didn't you ask me? That's all the people at Churchill. They never asked me. This is one's going to have a white cap, 2's going to have a red cap, or the 1A is going to have a red cap, the 1B is going to have a black cap, and the 1X is going to have so fine, And so, it's, again, to get to your question after the anecdote, you go colors first, equipment second, and shadow rolls are part of that equipment. Baffert's horses always have I think it's a blue shadow roll. So those are very easy to pick up. And again, it's that front view that you really have to worry about when they're coming into the stretch. That's the hard one. And like Phil Georgieff had that phrase, like, here they come, spinning on the turn. It was brilliant because I know, he didn't have to think about saying that. He was just saying that to wait for those horses to get into a position. Because after they turn, they run it, they turn and they come at you like this. And after they get down the stretch a little bit, then you can start to see the sides of the horses from where you're at. So, we're on the 3rd line of this, and we've got 15 pages to cover. But this is very, very, very important. So markers, highlighted, press releases. That's just a matter of fact of getting another horse's facts book, calling a big race, like. In the Derby, I called the first one. I thought it was going to be very fast, so I made this. I had so much crap in my attic, and I just moved when I moved out of Long Island, and so this is the only Derby I kept. But so I put down on here these numbers: 45 and 1, and 109 and 3. Because I was anticipating a fast pace in that race. So I went to the record books and whatever, and these are the numbers that equal the fastest times, splits. And sure enough, during that race, and all I had to do was kind of peek down. If they went up, instead of like really memorizing all these arcane little facts, sometimes you can put the real important ones here. Track records, stakes records, things like that. So I just put it at the bottom, and sure enough, they went up and faster than 45 and 1, and I got to say they're running at a record pace in the Kentucky Derby. So anyway, so you can, there's other notations you can use. I mean, use up all that space that you can on that program with all sorts of stuff. Oh, the cleaning crews come in.
Yeah,
God.
no,
Yeah.
I get it, it's all right, we have all kinds of things to fix.
Okay. And again, this is a pretty nifty. The other thing that most announcers do is they'll keep their program in the hand right here, and la 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 la. But I always thought it was easier to hold both hands on the binoculars. Now, how do you do with the harness program with the names? Now, if there are they're generally 2 pages, though, correct? Or sometimes it's 3 pages. Oh,
Most
not
of
in
the time
harness
it's
racing.
one.
No. In thoroughbred racing,
I'm from
you,
a small track, I get
Yeah.
8 horses if I'm lucky, and
okay. Just
I hold it out to me like this.
Right.
I'm watching them, I peek down, I watch them, I peek down.
Yeah.
Kinda like what I do when I practice, you don't even wanna know how I practice, you probably have me right.
Go ahead.
I practice while I drive car.
Okay.
Okay.
I reprogram while I'm driving. You can do it at 75 miles an hour. Well, let me just tell you why I do it. If you can read a program at 75 miles an hour, you can read them while they're doing 30. That's my thing. If you can do it on the thruway 75, I'm going around the track 30 miles an hour.
Next thing, let me corner the corner.
0 accidents, by the way. And tickets.
So far.
No
So far.
So far. All right, well, glad that you're still with
Just don't
us.
tell them.
I myself would not recommend that particular method, but you know, what works, works. And again, you're using your creative self. That's good.
I've been warned. I've been taken to go. I'm just kinda like throwing in my seat.
There's a law against texting, but I don't think there's a law against reading past performances.
Not yet.
Not yet. Next up in the legislature.
Good to go.
And again, so dictionary and thesaurus. You know, even I just okay. I'm going to pass this around to you. Now that Ellen has. Okay. So this was the race in which there was a horse called Balto Star and Keats. Congaree, Invisible Ink, Millennium Wind, Talk is Money, Song and a Prayer, Express Tour, Point Given, should have won, Monarchos, AP Valentine, the Belmont winner. So the first thing I do when I'm studying a race, by the way, equipment that you should have in the announcer's booth with you, a computer and a printer. And the printer, I'll show you why, among other reasons. I make several columns, A, B, C plus, C, M, and T. Front runner, pace presser, very close to the pace. Close to the pace. Middle, trailer. All right, I'll just use this race as an example. And I won't put them all, but I don't have them. So Balto Star, notorious front runner. Okay? And Keats was a front runner. This, by the way, is in post position. Keats was the 5-horse, but this will show. There were no absolute hard pace pressers in this race, but there were a bunch of horses that liked to sit just off of the pace. Okay, and I'm going to show you another. This is a 2. And underneath here, 45 and 2. Talk is money, song and a prayer. The C column was the horse that broke from the 2-hole, from the 5-hole Express Tour. Monarchos was down here. He broke from the far outside post. Okay, then we had AP Valentine, who was a middle runner. StarTac, Arctic Boy. And the closers that came out from way out of it were 50 Stars and Jamaican Rum. All right. So, what this method will do is to give you a general idea of how the race tactically is going to set up. There's more names over here than there are over here, generally are. When you get more horses on this side, that pace is going to be faster than you expect, because they're all horses try to get to a comfort zone. Not all. Some are very tractable. Harness horses are far more tractable than thoroughbreds. But harness horses, there are front runners, there are closers, and what have you. But again, that's complicated in harness racing because they do have 2 moves. Baltasar, I put this number 45 and 2. He was a very fast horse. Not a 1.25 mile horse. Very fast horse. 45 and 2. I thought he was going to be my front runner, and I thought he could run that fast. Turns out they ran faster than 45 and 2 because there were so many horses pushing the envelope. Keats. And again, there's another reason to read. There was a horse called Keats and, you would say Keats and Yeats. Well, if you read it all, you'd know that this guy's name is pronounced Yates. But that's just why you should read. So, Keats a front runner. Now, we have the second flight of horses, Congaree, Invisible Ink, Millennium Wind. I put a 2 here next to Millennium Wind. Horses, I'm speaking of thoroughbreds now, they have 1 run. They either run in the beginning, the middle, or the end. The race can be won in the beginning, in the middle, or the end. When you're structuring your call, you will have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's classical thinking. A beginning, a middle, and an end. Architecture is built the same way. Literature, all in the classic sense that way. So, Millennium Wind, he was a 2. So I knew that midway down that backstretch, and he was a big contender. And by the way, the contenders, the main contenders, as you can see here, I put in boldface type. And when you're making your plot, you can do that, and by the way, you don't have to use a typewriter, but or you can highlight it with a yellow highlighter or a blue highlighter for the main contenders. And so this is, to me, how the race is up. So he's a 2, which meant that he was a middle mover very consistently, at least very consistently that way. Jamaican Rum, although not necessarily you'd have to put it down, he was a 3, yes. Okay. Some front runners are actually 2s, where they do their best running in the middle of the race. They're very devastating. You get a horse that has speed, and then he runs the fastest part of his race. In the middle, boom, shoots away. So this is going to give me a pretty good idea how this race is going to shape up. So what I did, and by the way, this book are the notes that I took, okay? Things to say, and then for each horse, I had a dossier about, well, this is about the splits, how So if I said, so in terms of the splits, I knew that I was gonna say 45 seconds flat. If that happened, I put to memory, that is the fastest opening half ever in the Kentucky Derby. I put that down in ink. And then I took all the splits, and I don't do this for every race, never did, but this is the Derby, and I have 25 pages of notes for 1 2-minute race. 45 and 1, I would say, equals the fastest half ever in the Derby. 45 and 2, one of the fastest opening halves in the Derby. That halfway point call, that half-mile call is really, really key. You need to figure things out in your head about what that tipping point would be. So, I know if Balto Star goes 45 and 2, that's really fast, but gosh, he'd be the first horse ever to go that fast in the Derby and win. So that was kind of like the tipping point. When they hit that tipping point, go faster than that tipping point, then your eyes are going to start to shift over here when the running begins. Okay? Yesterday's Belmont Stakes, perfect example. What was that, 48 and 2? 48 and 4. Yeah, well, let's see what word I could have used. Here is a book. I'll let you guys, and lady, take a look through this book. This is the book that I tried to read every day, calling races. This is the summation of 43 years worth of work. Here's a really key page, 2 key pages, right at the front of the book. So I have 7 or 8 columns here. First column, words that you can say for very, very fast. Then very fast, fast, sort of fast. Even, slow, slower, and slowest. For fast, those are all the words I can use for fast. Very, very, very fast. Hot, 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 runaway, frenzied, scalding, absurdly fast, frantic, frenetic, imprudent, ruthless, cutthroat, vicious, uncontrollable, warp speed, otherworldly. And then for very fast, audacious, feverish, searing, serious, on down. There's 25 words for very fast. Fast, snappy, hot, taxing, reels off, aggressive, demanding, rattles off, hot, drill, hotly contested. Sort of fast, brisk, lively, spirited, crisp, legitimate. Even, steady gallop, reasonable, ambles. Legitimate, slow would be modest, temperate, saunter, precise gallop, controlled. Slower, accommodating, nonchalant, laid back, slow to develop, tepid, sachet, meander, dawdling, deliberate. That's probably where I would have used one of the words yesterday for 48 and 4. Able to get away with, calculated, effortless. And slowest will be plod along, hardly raise the gallop, pedestrian, glacial, snail-like, sleepwalk, somnambulant, soporific, a paucity pace, dearth, and enviably slow. So you need to go to a thesaurus and then just fast, and then again just start thinking words. Just a bit about rhetoric here and why you should use the good words. And people will listen to you if it sounds good. That's what rhetoric is all about. Rhetoric is technically trying to convince someone of a point that you're trying to make through speech. So, if you sound bad, you're going to turn off. If you say something that is memorable, instead of saying fast, that's pretty forgettable. But warp speed, I even remember that. Try to come up with those memorable things so people will pay attention and remember it. So that's just part of the words. Now, I have in the front of the book here, it's a pretty nifty little gadget. It's got 31 different chapters in the book. Splits was the first one that I just read to you. Section 2, if I gotta go, let's say, okay, so I've got Balto Star, he's a front runner. Okay, so let me go to the, no, better yet, Millennium Wind, a middle mover. So I've got a section here, moving horses, that's section 22. So I go to section 22, and then I have my words and my phrases. Attacks, stiff challenge, emerging from the pack, on the prowl, serious altercation. And by the way, frequently, I would put next, when I came up with a new word or a new phrase, I would put the date on there. Serious altercation, I put 5/3/14. I was still putting words in here 4 months before I retired, 3 months before I retired. Gaining with every stride, uncorks a tremendous rally, put to a fierce drive. On 4/18/10, 2010, I put in a cavalcade of 14. Cavalcade's a great word. Cavalcade's nothing more than a parade of people riding horses. You should root for the Cavaliers, by the way, because that just means rider, horse rider. And so on. So when I come up, if I'd see Millennium, okay, let's he's a big favorite here, let's go. Hurtling past, slashing through the field, soaring, powers to the lead, catapults to the lead. So I wrote down those words, and I just added to it every friggin' day. And after 40 years, you come up with something that takes hours to read. And again, that builds, that energy that you bring to it, it builds on itself. Yeah, it's 10 o'clock?
It's 10.
Okay, fine, I've got plenty of wind left, trust me. Again, write them down. He's thinking, oh yeah, I remember that.
What about like different geographies of these sorts, the names of these sorts, like French or Italian
Yes.
or Arabic? I mean, how do you,
Read.
use correct words?
Yeah,
Of course.
read. I was very fortunate in my education to study Latin. It was the only subject I did well in high school. I was a pretty good student, but Latin I was an outstanding student. National honors in Latin. Latin is, and I tell you what Latin did too. It's funny how life works out. Latin is the basis for all the Romance languages, of course, and it also teaches you structure, very important that way. But it also taught me how to memorize. It's all memory. Repetitium mater est. Repetition is the mother of learning. And so you've got to memorize the declensions of amas amat, amamus amunt amat, and in words, to remember words, you just have to repeat them, and that's how my memory developed, just through repetition. And I didn't really. Somebody asked me that not long, it's just like 2 years ago. I said, how did you develop? I don't know. Would you learn in school? No. And I said, well, I took Latin, and oh yeah. I just kept on memorizing, repeating it. And we will get to memory, and if I just make sure we get back to that we will in Ken's notes because they're so comprehensive. I want to get back to this as to what I did with the chart for the Derby. So, these are the colors of the horses. Before the Derby, I had these little flashcards. It's not something you would do before every race, but before a big race that you're going to call, like this afternoon, when your knees are knocking and stuff like that, you're going to know. You have those horses memorized before they walk on the track. So this is what I perceived the field to look like going into the first turn. And it was pretty easy. There weren't a lot of horses that looked alike. And they weren't going to be bunched up, except in the middle of the field here, there were a couple purples and a dark color and a dark blue. So I knew at that point, you really got to keep your eyes peeled. And then this was the way I figured they were going to be in the next part of the race. People coming, horses going in one direction, horses going the other. So I just looked at this and I got a very good view of what I thought it would be. Now, in the realm of memorizing, pictures are far more easy to remember than words. Think of the Empire State Building, okay? Someone goes, that's the Empire State Building. You go, Empire State Building, Empire State Building, okay, Empire State Building, so okay. But then someone shows you a picture of it, yeah, that's the Empire State Building. Images are far better to remember things by. So, let's say Keats. Keats was green, a yellow bar, and white sleeves. So I'd take a picture of an old English writer, and he'd be in his beard and holding a pipe or whatever, and Mr. Keats would be wearing green, yellow, green, and white sleeves. Keats. Balto stars, all black. So maybe I'll think of a map of Baltimore, and it's just all black. Secretariat, Dave Johnson, when he was memorizing Secretariat, he envisioned the Secretariat building of the United Nations, and it was all in white and blue blocks. So that is a method. I didn't use that method only as a last resort for a name that just wouldn't stick. That happened a little bit later on in the day, when my mind was enervated from memorizing. But that is a technique that one could use. But you'll see this book is called the Mayor Daily. I've had these two pictures in this book for 30 years. And so this book was always referred to as the Mayor Daily. He was the mayor of Chicago when I was growing up, so he was always a good luck charm for me. Anyway, so I'm gonna just pass this around. Just you folks can just take a look at it. If you can only take maybe a minute or piece or so, just to look at it and give you an idea of what that book was about. So facts, phrase sheet. These are things that Ken worked on there. What you need to have in the announcer's booth. It's a little bit far. A toothbrush kit, lozenges, throat spray, Rolaids, drinking water. Yeah, that's all good and well. So section 4, all the right stuff. Clarity and diction. Can we hear and understand the announcer? Well, this just goes without saying. Now, you do not have to over-elocute anymore. Once upon a time you did. Because race calling was only for those folks at the track. And there were acoustical problems. Part of the problems with acoustics, wind is a killer. It just takes the sound and just blows it wherever it wants to go. The stadiums are really hard because they're generally made of very hard, stiff materials like concrete and steel, and so the noise bounces off that. If you ever go in a restaurant, you'll see that they have stuff on the walls and sometimes acoustic. This is called an acoustical ceiling. So the sound's going to go there. It's not going to come bouncing back at you. So let's take an example. The great announcer Fred Capicello. He was the guy that said, "It is now post time," and his voice was perfect for the time. There's a term for the noise that a crowd makes. It's called susurrus. It's not a monopoetic term, like susurrus. And again, if you wind up reading about sound and how sound works, there are different wavelengths, and the higher pitched sounds can break through the lower pitches of susurrus And that is why Fred Capicella could be understood. He also over-elocuted. He enunciated every sentence and dot and T. No need for that anymore. Because most people, while I'm still on Fred Capicella, I'll tell you first. Most people watch television, watch races on TV. And these days, more and more on a computer. It's like, it's not a mass medium. You're just sitting there looking at a screen. And I don't have to worry about dropping a G on ing, although it's not a good idea, or over-elocuting, or getting my voice way up here, because I'm just talking to you now. Television it's a misnomer that it's a mass medium. In terms of communication, it's not a mass medium. It is a very private medium. Most people watch TV alone, or with one other person, or two or three. You're not speaking to mass numbers of people. So Ken goes a lot in here about diaphragmatic breathing, not putting it down by any means, but you don't really have to use that great support to reach that person in the last row like they taught me how to do in college. You don't have to do that. Even on Broadway, these sissies, they sing into microphones, which is pathetic. I'm just an opera weenie, and it's unthinkable and unnecessary. You can sing to a whole audience without being, putting it through a microphone and distorting it, whatever. So yeah, don't worry. Don't get crazy about enunciating. Don't get crazy about it. I mean, speak correctly and speak distinctly, but don't have to overdo it now because it's a different world. Also, I will tell you this is a different world from the 50s and 60s. If Fred Capicella were to walk into Belmont Park today, probably wouldn't get the job. If I were to have walked into Belmont Park in 1955, certainly wouldn't get the job. They might have arrested me. Because at that time, they wanted that voice. Some of the announcers at that time were very, very distinguished and whatever, almost stentorian in their tone. And the racetracks were gambling places where gambling took place. Well, the management, they didn't really want to give that image that gambling was going on. Of course, they fomented it in every way they possibly could, but they didn't want they wanted the announcer to be their spokespiece and to be beyond reproach, be dignified and not add to. You would never say, and the favorite is fourth. You couldn't have never said that back then. And now times have changed, and their view of how their product should be presented has changed. The announcer could never editorialize. Never. You can never say he's going too fast. No. And they didn't even. Well, in the Thoroughbred game anyway, they didn't even announce the fractions until much later. So don't get crazy about the enunciating and breathing. You talked a little bit about diaphragmatic breathing. So I just want you to do something here. I'm going to teach you how to breathe properly. And so take your hand and put it on your stomach, right about here. Okay. Now, what you're going to do is breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Now, you're doing it absolutely incorrectly, Paul. He just went like this. No. You're going to want to push your inhale through your nose and push out your stomach. Okay? And out through your mouth. Kind of hard to get used to. Now you see you're trying to fill up your lungs right here. You fill it up down here. So push out that stomach. This is a terrific way to relax. I do a lot of, now more so because I have the time, meditation, self-hypnosis. And if when you get nervous, anxious, just do simple breathing and try to feel that cold air come through your nose and concentrate on that. And then you'll feel it fill up your lungs, and then, and there's a circle that goes on there. The air comes through your nose and down to your lungs and then out. It's almost a circular pattern. And so if you can it takes a little getting used to. But again, when you get up there and your knees are knocking, before calling that race, it says I did quite a bit, and it's pretty efficacious. He puts another thing about tongue twisters in here. You can do that. I never found it all that necessary. Again, that's kind of old school stuff that teachers taught about. Breathing for the diaphragm and enunciating every word. With microphones and acoustics the way they are now, it's the least of your problems. Clarity and diction, okay. Post braids, rundowns, race calls, never come across, of course, never come across as bored. It's energy, energy, energy. Every time you turn on that mic, you should almost have a Pavlovian response. Turn on that mic and that means energy. And I had a thing that I always, and again, self-hypnosis helped with this a little bit. We're not going anywhere near there today. But the horses have reached the starting gate, they're at the post. And some of those things are pretty good to say over in a repeated way. The horses have reached the starting gate, they're at the post. People get used to that and they go, oh God, I better get to the window right now, or I got to go down, or whatever. So people will respond to what you say if you do just a couple things like that. That will help out. And 5 minutes to pose, 3, 2, 1. That's all good stuff too. Load up. Accuracy. Well, this just goes without saying. Correctly identifying the horses. During the call, you have to get through the whole field. At least once. Every horse needs to get measured at least once. Now, when you start planning a call, now the Derby's 1.25 miles, okay? So most of the years I had 20 horses. And I put a little clock on it, and to say those 20 names and something else, like so-and-so's first, so-and-so's second, so-and-so's wide, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. It was going to take me about over 40 seconds. So I knew in the Derby and just planning my call out that I would say, and they're off for the Kentucky Derby, and that just gave me enough time to let them sort themselves off. And when you're off call, if you can just take a little time with it just, and I frequently would say, although not all the time, but frequently would say, and they're off, or whatever. Well, that was just letting me get a little time to let the horses run away from each other for just a little bit. So you're off call, if you can come up with something, and you don't have to say the same thing every time. I actually tried to mix it up as much as I could because I wanted to avoid a trademark. I wanted to avoid that, and I'll mention that in a minute. But anyway, so that business of opening up like that, it'll give you a little time, and really important. This is one of the most important things I can tell you today. When you're going through the field, and you must give every horse a call. You don't have to give it to them right out of the gate, because you might not be remembering a horse's name. It will happen. This just does. Even though you think you've got these horses memorized so completely, so perfectly, whatever. Say the horse's name first. For instance, Secretariat leads. Affirmed is second, Seattle Sue's on the outside third. California Chrome fourth, and American Pharaoh fifth and last. Okay? I said the horse's name first before I said anything about the horse. This is very important. let's try this. The leader is Secretariat. The second horse is Affirm. The horse on the outside is Seattle Slew. The fourth horse is California Chrome. And the fifth horse is, you're screwed. You are screwed royally. So let's say you're going through the field and so-and-so is first, so-and-so is second, so-and-so is third, so-and-so is fourth. Now you can't remember American Pharaoh, can't remember the name. Just go back to the front. And then maybe you can peek down to your program or try to figure it out. But you can do that because you've completed the sentence. Subject, verb. You can't do verb and forget the subject because you're screwed. You're just screwed. So, and it's a great drill to do if you're serious about race calling, is to get those names first. I tried to do in the Derby, and I would the weeks leading up to it, I would just get and record yourself whenever possible. So I just go, Balto Star first, Keats second, Congaree third, Invisible Link fourth, Millennium Wind fifth, Talk About Me sixth, blah, blah, blah. Just make sure I got into the pattern of saying that name first and hoping that I got through all 20 of them. And then, particularly with the Derby, not panicking, because names just keep on going. The first time I did it, I went, oh my God, the race is half over, you screwed this up, blah, 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 blah. You got to know ahead of time that they're going to be in the backstretch before you get through the field. That's all part of preparing for and visualizing what it is that you're going to do. So again, underline, boldface type, please. Horse's name first. Announcers should anticipate a horse's upcoming position as it advances or drops back, only to a point. Looking at horses. And this goes back to what I was talking to Wayne about before. They're trying to figure out whether they're doing well or not doing well. In the slop, off tracks, don't even go there. Don't even try to figure out if they're really doing well or really not, because Kip, being a horseman, will tell you in an instant, they'll say, I don't like this, and spit out the bit. And if you're going down the backstretch, he's in front by 5, he looks like he's going to win by 20, and then he stops. So you can kind of do that on a fast track, because if you, in time, get used to what horses look like. Kip, you've seen tens of thousands of horses, and you can look at them and figure out, if they're doing well, if they're not doing well. In the slop, it looks like they might be doing well, and Kaputski. So you gotta, yeah.
How about the fourth race Wednesday, full field of maidens? Half of them haven't run yet. How can you train yourself to be? I mean, I can see preparing for the big ones, and there's some established form. How about maidens and first-time starters, and how do you?
There are great limitations as to what you can do, and that's one of them. If you have first-time starters, you just don't know, and it looks like they're really, really sailing along, and particularly early in a race and stuff like that, you just cannot commit to them. There are times when you can commit, and it's best not to, if you're not 100% sure. For instance, when War Emblem, I'll tell you a little story. So War Emblem's going for the Triple Crown. And so I couldn't do a lot of live hits on the show for NBC because I was up in the booth memorizing. I had them bamboozled into thinking that I was so intent on what I was about to do that you please don't disturb me. So we did a piece on tape, and War Emblem was a notorious front runner. you know, and he just went to the front, and that's what he did. That's all he could do. So, so we put a piece on tape. And I said, okay, well, the Belmont Stakes, it's a mile and a half, and it's a very fair race. And one of the reasons it's very fair is because the start doesn't amount to anything. The start doesn't count. If you make a stumble at the start, it doesn't make any difference. You got a mile and a half to go for the race. It doesn't. The start means nothing in the Belmont Stakes. So that was slotted to go in right before the start of the race. I was on videotape. They ran out of time. War Emblem falls on his face coming out of the gate, and at 2 to 5 or whatever he was never better than fourth. Got beat 57 lengths or something like that. So sometimes you can commit, and sometimes you can't. And it was just a great example of sometimes you're not as smart as you actually think you are. And thank goodness the videotape didn't roll there. So, again, back to your question. Brendan, back to your question. You can't always do this. Obviously, with a bunch of first-time starters, you just can't do this. This is with horses with established form. And you're not expected to be so prescient as to figure out who's going to be doing where and what when half the field hasn't run. It's good to know who the first-time starters are. You can inject that into your call, and mention that if need be. I'll get to you in just a second. I just want to get to this thought. In your packet there, I think there's an essay called "Plot and Narrative."
Yes.
And when you read that, no need to do it now, but when you read that, I find that races are little dramas, stories. You're the storyteller. And every play has its characters, and those characters are the horses. And all of those characters have a plot line of their own. They have their own characteristics that makes them the particular character that they are. And you have an audience. Now, guy comes on stage wearing a black cat, well, he's the bad guy. And there's the good guy, and then there's the evil witch, and then there's Dorothy. So the audience knows that. The audience knows the players because they know the past performances. The audience knows who the first-time starters are. They know who the stretch runners are. They know who the front runners are. In the big races, they know that a particular horse does not like to run on the outside or on the inside. California Chrome, very typical. So those are the things that the audience knows. Now, if something happens out of character, Balto Star breaks last. If he's not this famous front runner, doesn't make any difference. But the audience knows that character. The audience knows what this one is expected to do. So, that's a fact. You should put that to memory. And if he's not out here and he's over here, you got to make a big point of that. Or if this horse, 50 Star, is over here, you got to make a big point of that. You can't always do it because there's not always the established form like this. That's why that's a big race call, and it's not the fourth with 6 maidens. Yeah, sorry.
What about using the colors the jockeys are wearing as part of the commentary, as well as the bite time to pick up a name?
Yes, very good.
Like,
And thank you for coming all the way. Yes, you came a long way from Barbados today to be here.
yeah.
Yes, that is not something that I did. In other words, what he's saying is, and out in the red colors there is, or out in the blue and yellow colors is American Pharaoh. Or he's, here comes Honor Code, down the outside with those green colors and what have you. Trevor Demon, most notably, does that. Many announcers do it. I think it's just a matter of taste, but becoming less and less important now because, again, people are watching these races on TV, the vast majority. And even these little chiclets that they have going now, it's pretty easy to pick up. Chiclets, I mean those little things on the bottom of the screen that are moving with tracks information. You can kind of tell where they are. And if you also provide information, like saying, instead of saying American Pharaoh and those blue and yellow silks, well, people can see that. You can see it quite readily on a television screen, and generally, if they're watching a very small image as opposed to watching them when they're half mile away. If they're half mile away, well, maybe, yeah, maybe that blue and yellow.
My racing gets carried on radio as well, so.
It does not work on radio. No, no, the guy in the blue and no.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
color the race.
Yeah, well, maybe I misunderstood your question. I thought you were.
I also use it to buy time. For example, I would say the one in the black with red sleeves, white cheek pieces is Lord Blackadder.
Right.
So what I'm doing is, if I'm trying to pick up the horse, I usually have the colors on the box right next to me. So I would just I'll go the one in the black with the red cheek pieces is.
Right. Try memorizing before they go out the track. But yes.
The problem.
Yeah. And again, you don't have to worry about that so much if you do the horse's name first. Okay? Because let's say you're going through the field and you cannot remember the horse's name and he's back there. Well, you just go back to the front. People aren't going to, so-and-so's first, so-and-so's second, so-and-so's third. You don't know who that fourth is. And then you use a transitional phrase. Very key, write this down. Very key, very important. Transitional phrases. They allow you to take your binoculars and, sometimes there'll be two horses wearing red or whatever. You only see a little splash of red here or there. So, so-and-so is third, so-and-so is fourth. And so the field continues down the backstretch run, heading for the far turn. That gives you about 3 or 4 seconds. And then you can look here, you can look here, and as the field continues, and so you can take your glasses. The field's still going to continue down the backstretch, okay? But you can take your glasses and go back and forth through that field until you got them figured out. They continue down the backstretch run on a beautiful day here in Goshen, New York, or whatever. You don't want to go that far. But, so transitional phrases. Here they come, spitting out of the turn. And they're off. Again, when you do splits, that's a great opportunity. Always know where those fractional times are on the board. Don't rely on the TV. Because the TV can, they can take them up and put them down whenever they want. On the board, they're generally displayed permanently. The first quarter's up and stays there, and what have you. So, especially when I did a lot of calling at tracks all over the place. I worked for ESPN and NBC, so I'd be going into a completely unfamiliar place. Churchill Downs is a very hard place to pick up the splits. They're very small on that board. But you've just got to know exactly where to look. So they're going into the first turn, and you know that 10 degrees to your left is exactly where that split's going to be. You've got to get that. So they're moving into the first turn, and then you take a brief, quick look, fractions of a second. Over there, you see that the half is up in 45 and 1, and they've run the opening half mile here in a blistering 45 and 1/5 seconds. So the field continues on the backstretch. It doesn't sound like I'm padding, which I am. But I'm giving that information out. But it only takes me a millisecond to pick up that time. So I've got it here, and then I can elocute that, and while I'm elocuting that, I can take my binoculars, move them back and forth. I can take my eyes wherever they need to be down on the page, or Dean says it's over on the side there, or whatever. So use those transitional calls and phrases, have them at the ready, and know where the splits are. You can, harness racing, I always, that's a good question. How often do you do the splits? When I was one of the first people to use splits in calling thoroughbred races, and everybody's, oh, that's a harness announcer. I do splits. Sorry, but they're every bit as important, if not more so, in thoroughbred racing. But I would always give the first quarter split and the half-mile split. Now, again, this is part of your preparation for a race. So, in harness racing is pretty straightforward. You can do that. You can do the quarter, do the half. But then there's a question of 3/4. So you're at the Meadowlands, and now there's only a quarter of a mile left in the race. Do you want to take that time to put up that 3/4 mark? I know it's very, very key in handicapping, and it's very, very key as far as the race goes. Again, this is just a matter of personal preference, but I didn't do that unless I really had the time, because that is a really emotional part of the race. Who's moving, in what direction. Particularly in thoroughbred racing, I almost never gave the split at the top of a stretch unless it was an important sprinting stakes race. Because at that point, that's what I would call to myself la momento de verdad, the moment of truth. And I always hated to interject something so analytical as the 3/4 time. But in the makeup of the race, I mean those you have to give your listener an idea of pace. Pace makes the race, old bromide, and because that's Balto Star gets to the half in 48 and change. It's huge. He's not going to lose, and that's the whole story of the race. And you've got to give that big bang, that call. Sometimes it's at the beginning, sometimes it's the middle, sometimes it's at the end. Most of the time, the crescendo ends with the finish line. Most of the time. But War Emblem falls on his head at the start. La Momenta de Verdad, 3-5 favorite, has just lost the Triple Crown. And again, like a blistering move down the backstretch, or a non-blistering move. Yesterday, American Pharaoh gets to the half in 48 and 4. Triple Crown won. That was La Momenta de Verdad. So, and when he crossed the finish line, of course, he won the Triple Crown. But in terms of that, the way the race developed tactically, that was it. So, and again, as far as plot goes, that's the highlight of the plot is when that race is won or lost. And again, it can be won anywhere. So frequently at the finish line. But again, this is what you're thinking of. And again, it's part of that knowing the players, knowing what your audience knows, and preparation.
A few questions. Feel free to cut me off.
Yeah.
Kentucky Derby with 20 horses obviously is an extreme. Yesterday I was watching a race, I think the first race, Belmont, there's 3 or 4 horses. Mm-hmm. How do you buy time in a 3 or 4 horse race without keep running through the field?
Yeah, well, you gotta keep running through the field. Well, at that point, you can add a lot more. Lengths and margins are very important. When I first started out, that's basically what announcers did, lengths and margins. And it was basically like the chart of a race. You could look at that chart, and that's what announcers did. First at the half by 3, second by a half, third by 2, blah, blah, blah. But what I wanted to do was make those races sound less like charts and more like the footnotes that appeared at the bottom of the chart. So that's kind of how I got on that path of using rhetorical concepts to make my point calling races. So it just started up very simply, and people used to say, "What? You know, did you hear that? He said the horses stumbled at the start. The announcers weren't supposed to do that. You know, and you said that, you know, that horse was 3 wide. You know, I used to get calls from jockey agents. What are you saying that for? Who's my business? The jock said my jock was 3 wide. I said, well, it was. Well, that's not your job. Well, it was. But then they came to realize that at the end of a race, I would say, and brilliantly ridden by so-and-so. And I would call attention to the good and bad things the jockeys did. You can't be judgmental now. You really gotta watch that. It's a fine line at times. And by the way, if a horse is going fast, you can't say too fast, because you don't know if you're going too fast. I said when Real Quiet ran in his Belmont Stakes looking for the Triple Crown, I said, and Kent DeSormo is moving early with Real Quiet 5 furlongs out. And you can take that a couple ways, but what I didn't say was that Kent DeSormo is moving too early with Real Quiet. Now, either way, he loses the race by this much. People are saying, oh, he moved too early. If he'd have won by that much, it would have been the most brilliantly timed move by a jockey of all time. But he did move early. 5 furlongs out is early, given the proper circumstances. But too early? I'm not going to say that.
Switching gears, we're talking about maiden races. A few minutes before the race, do you look at the odds board to see if there's a 20-to-1 shot that's suddenly 8-to-5 and say, oh, I better make clear no to him, or what's going on? That
Well, no, I call my bookie. Yes, yes. And again, that was something that I did start to incorporate in my race calls very early on in the 70s. Most people weren't doing that, mentioning betting at all, because they just didn't want you to do it, which I thought was just preposterous. And they didn't call the finish. Announcers didn't call the finish back then. And even in New York, they didn't. They always ended every race with "in front." Isn't that thrilling? And they shut off the mic because they thought people would burn down the grandstand if you called the wrong horse. I never saw anybody burn down a grandstand, other than the mobsters, you know. But, so, you know, you just gotta be careful that way, I guess.
Tom, you were talking earlier about the Derby, and I was listening to that HRRN during Derby week. The radio, they had Travis Stone on it. I think he said you gave him a call, or he talked to you, and you had given him some advice on what to do to call his first Derby.
Yeah.
What'd you say to him?
We talked a good period of time. I know Travis since he was about that big. He would come to. He's from upstate New York, and he'd come to Saratoga, and you know, I'd look down and there'd be this little kid, and the horses would be running behind him. He'd be looking up at me, seeing what I was doing. And then when he got older, let him come up on the roof and call races, and now he's calling the Kentucky Derby. God bless him. What did I tell Travis? That business about timing of getting through that field, and it's going to take you 45 seconds to do that, and not to be rattled by it. And I said, what I always like to do in the Derby was say first, second, third, so-and-so's fourth, so-and-so's fifth. It's going to sound like forever, but you can give people some information. It's a lot easier just to say, and they're in the backstretch, Secretary, Affirm, then Seattle Slew, and then American Pharaoh, and then California Chrome, and then you can just keep on saying horses' names. Well, what are you giving people? You know, I mean, so you can say, hey, you know, Secretary was 14th on the first turn. They got a little something there. So I told him that. Told him to breathe easier. Let's get back for a second while we're on the subject about nerves. that's why I wasn't in the booth yesterday. I just, the stress just got to me too much over the years. It didn't get any easier. Before every Breeders' Cup, I would, from Labor Day to Breeders' Cup Day, I would lead a monastic lifestyle. Probably the most extreme thing I did was exercise. But diet, exercise,
Stop drinking.
hypnosis. Oh, no drinking. No, didn't have a
That's
drop.
more extreme than exercise.
Yeah, didn't have it. Yeah, that you're right. And so I just wanted to. I didn't want to have a single excuse for not doing the very best I could possibly do on Breeders' Cup Day. And so I physically and mentally prepared myself as much as I could. Hypnosis was part of that, and the business about your hand shaking. Travis, understandably, I knew that was going to be one of the topics, so I explained that. And when I did, every year before I called the Derby, I went to a hypnotist in Louisville, sat me down, and got hypnotized. This in addition to my meditation, and believe me, don't think I'm a monk. Trust me, that's not the case. And also, I took a drug called Inderol. No known side effects. Inderol is what they call a beta blocker, and it basically reduces the. You're nodding because
My fiance is on a beta blocker.
Oh, okay, good. Is he a nervous wreck?
Well, he's got a little.
Oh, that's why your fiance not married.
I'm sure he'll die once he says I do.
Let's hope not. You don't need to be a widow so soon. But Inderol, beta blocker, it stops the excessive flow of adrenaline into your system. That's adrenaline. You don't want too much of it. Dick Enberg, the great broadcaster I worked with for many years on NBC, was talking about, this adrenaline. He goes, it's a great thing, Tom. And adrenaline is a great thing. Adrenaline makes you see faster, think faster. Adrenaline's good. Scientifically, when you're on adrenaline, you actually become stronger. That's why we have this fight or flight thing. Your ancestors were not the guys that didn't get an adrenaline rush when you heard a snake rattling right next to them. Okay, the ones that did, they're the ones that projected the human race. Okay, so it's part of our being and our physical makeup. So Dick always said that adrenaline, it really is a great thing, but too much is no good. And so that's what Inderol does. It stops that excessive flow. And also golfers use Inderol. It's not a druggy drug. It's harmless. But they use it to prevent the yips. To getting nervous and moving that putter. So I used it just to hold the binoculars straight. So that's another thing I told Travis. I told him to get index cards and boom, 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 boom. And I told him the memorizing is not the hardest part. That 20-horse field is by far and away so far down on your list of concerns. Okay, so, and those horses backwards and forwards, you must, every little shadow roll, cheek pieces, whatever. That's what I told Travis. Where were we?
10:49.
Sorry?
10:49.
Yeah, I think we're rolling here. I don't know, does anybody, you guys want to take a break? Let's take another 10 minutes, maybe we could grab a couple. We have to be out here by noon, is that right?
Well, that's enough time for people to get lunch and get situated in the grandstand.
Okay.
We could go a little bit past noon if you.
Okay, all right, fine.
Races start at 1.
Okay. So accuracy, I mean, that's pretty, another two, I want to get back to telling how horses are doing. Boy, when I saw that stride on California Chrome, I didn't see it until this morning. I mean, that was impressive. That lengthening stride of his is really just. What was his last quarter? 24-2. Somebody told me something like that. Yeah, And that's because he got away with a half in 48 and 4, you know, a momento de verdad. And he was just so full of run on that long, beautiful, fluid stride. When you're looking at horses, and Kip is probably a lot better than, certainly a lot better than this than I. Kip being a horseman. You're getting this from a person that's allergic to horses, so. But one thing that you can tell about how a horse is enjoying himself is his ears. Very important to look at their ears. Their ears are a very important part genetically and physically for horses. It's their first line of defense. Their natural predators are the big cats. The big cats are faster for a quarter mile than the thoroughbreds, okay? The big cats also attack them from underneath. Very bad idea to go up to a horse and go, hey, how you doing? Don't do that. So, but their first line of defense, as long as they had a quarter mile head start on those big cats, okay, they were okay, because horses can run fast for a long time. So, they've got these radar antennae, okay? Now, when they're happy and content and alert, their ears are to the front, okay? When they get into a fight with another horse, okay, because like what's happening, the first thing when somebody does when they try to punch you in the face, you cover up your eyes. That's your first line of defense. If you can't see, you're screwed. Horses, if they can't hear, they're screwed. So when they get into a fight, those ears go in fight mode, boom, like this, down. So if another horse tries to strike out at them, they're not going to chop off their ears because their ears are in a very defensive mode. So when horses get in a fight in the stretch, they're like this, they're fully extended or whatever. If you see a horse in the stretch and his ears are like this, he's happy as a clam. You look, I didn't look closely enough, but you look at, I'm sure if you look at California, or I can't call it California anymore, American Pharaoh, you know, I was looking at the jockey yesterday, and again, jockey's very key to look at. You know, he was up in the saddle. A bit about jockeys as well. So look at their ears. And you can pick them up with good glasses. You can do that on the backstretch. So a horse that's just sailing along, he's got his ears pricked, very, very happy horse. If early in the race his ears are back here, that means he's uncomfortable. Again, this is, what percentage would you say, 95%?
I'll tell you.
Of the time, yeah. Yeah, well, one second. Anything else that I'm missing here?
Sometimes the way they'll cock their head, or hold their tail, but the ears are the biggest indicator.
Yeah, hold their tail. If their tail's in between their legs, bad sign. But I'm talking when they're running in a race.
If the tail comes up,
Yes,
it's
tail
not
comes up.
good.
Yeah. And also their stride. When horses are really slowing down, it looks like they're jumping up and down. At the eighth pole, when they're striding out, good thing. But if they're jumping up and down, they're not going in the right direction. I just had one thought, then I'll go right back to you, Dean. Go ahead.
Just with the ears thing, one of the things I noticed from when I was riding as a job, good horses, when they get into that point where they're usually asked to go, and sometimes you can need to pick it up with the binoculars, you can actually see them switching their ears like that, just waiting for the signal, just getting ready for it. I mean, it's not something I'm going to see easy with glasses, but I found as a rider, you know, you'd sit on a horse and realize, okay, he's waiting for that signal to
Excellent.
go.
He beat me to it. I was gonna say the same thing. A horse is switching his ears. He's waiting either for the driver to say giddy up, or he's waiting to hear horses coming behind him. Sometimes if they hear hoof steps, they'll take off.
But it's not this.
It's not pinned back. They're twitching them
Yeah,
back and
both,
forth,
right.
like they're trying to tune it in.
Yes.
And when you pop the plugs, when you see a driver kick, he'll pop the plugs, and that's when the horse really starts twitching, because now he can really hear. And now he's like, "What do we got? Why'd you take my plugs out? Okay, it's time to go."
Time to go.
And he takes off.
And American Pharaoh wears earplugs. I don't think they ever. Well, they don't kick them out. They just stay there. Looking at looking at jockeys, I have to ask Wayne about a driver, harness driver. But so here's a position. It's a jockey's head. There's his back, and there's his legs, and there's his arms. Okay. When their legs are like that and they're more upright, the horses are going very, very easily. In the next position, scusi. Sorry, Monarchos. Next position. Actually, this should be more down like that. The jockey takes a lower attitude. His legs are now bent. His back is bent over. When he wants that horse to relax, long turf races, they ride very high. The more they get down, the more they want that horse to be going fast. Now, Wayne, I want you to tell me about how to do this in harness races, because I see these guys going back like this. I don't know if they're being aerodynamic. I could never figure it out.
It's a little of both. It's a lifting technique. When the guy's leaning back, like you see Ronnie Wren, Aaron Merriman, whoever, leaning back in the bike, they're aerodynamic because the wind's passing over them instead of through them, and it's also lifting the bike. The bike lifts a little bit and takes a little bit of weight off the horse. Whatever you can get to use as an advantage to get the horse to go the
When they're
complete
back
mile.
like that, they're not necessarily trying to hold the horse back, are they?
No, if you see a driver's arms pull back like this forcibly, then he's trying to tuck a horse into a hole or whatever. But if a guy's just laying back like Ronnie Run, he's what they call sitting chilly in the bike. He's just kicking back and he's just letting the horse go.
When I called the harness races at the Meadowlands from 1983 to 1990, and there wasn't any of that. You never saw anybody lay back in a bike. But I could always tell from their arms, you know, when it was going, when it was.
Well, my local track, one of the first drivers to really do that was like maybe Dave Flanagan, John Cummings Jr., them types of guys. I don't know if you ever know Buffalo or Batavia, but them are the guys I grew up around. And them are the ones I really noticed that started to use that. And then they had a sulky back in the, I don't know if you know, in the late 80s, they had a single hitch sulky.
Singles, yeah.
Dangerous.
Very dangerous.
But they used to use them, and them were for that.
They have one
lifting-
downstairs, actually, in the
that
museum
lifting
here.
technique. You'd lay back, the Jose Delgados, they all use, and Chris Carubas, they'd lay back in the bike and it would lift that horse, lift that weight just a little bit, just so they could glide along a little bit quicker.
Yep.
Get that tip of the second.
Problem was, if there was
If there was a wreck, it was.
if there was a wreck, it was that acted as a catapult. And,
The quick hitch is the best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what position of the favorite. Yes, we mentioned that. And calling the horse to the finish. You know, some Europeans and announcers do this. When the horses cross the finish line, they go, it's all goes first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and they go all the way to the field and all the way back to the horse that was 19. I suppose, okay, so you know where, you know, your horse finished, but, you know, originally the people at NBC, when I was calling the Derby, said, well, you know, why don't you tell everybody where they finished? I heard this guy, and he went all the way to the field, and I go, well, okay, first of all, he's just showing off, and it's not a big deal. Secondly, if you want me to put a bullet through the excitement of your event, I'll do it for you, okay? So I bring him back to first three, and then, you know, say, you know, Monarchos wins the Kentucky Derby, the second fastest time in history, blah, 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 and saying, you know, instead of saying, and Balto Star was 14th, and Invisible Ink finished 15th, it's just this is my sister calling. Excuse me. Yeah. But then I'll have to call you back. You caught me at a very bad time. I said you caught me at a very bad time. I'm in front of. Hey, everyone want to say hello to Bethad?
Okay.
Okay, so I'll talk to you later. Bye. And we'll shut this thing off. So I always called, you know, the winners, and then I started doing something which I call denouement, and that was like a bit of a tagline after the horses cross the finish line. A salute to the winner. It's part of the excitement of the event. It's the point of the event. And so just to say, you know, so-and-so first, so-and-so second, so-and-so third, well, okay. But so-and-so first in a great ride by Edgar Prado. So-and-so first after having no chance at the eighth pole. So-and-so first after a dazzling fraction. So-and-so first after withstanding a... So, you know, that saying something in the finish, I mean, really puts an exclamation point to the end of it. It's totally optional. But with the big races and stuff like that, again, I had all sorts of facts memorized for it. I tried to, let's see here, in my preparation, again, these are just the notes for yeah. So AP Valentine. Okay, this is what every horse had. These particular columns, notes, if you will. I had one for every horse in the Derby. This is just the ones for AP Valentine. And under that I had horse's name. I tried to put all these things to memory. Horse's name, jockey. Style, M. AP Valentine, there it is, AP Valentine, M. Win, call. So if he were to win, these are the words I was going to say. It's AP Valentine and Millennium Wind, but it won't be his day. It's Valentine's Day in Kentucky. How about that? Millennium Wind is second, but it's Valentine's Day. That was fairly clever, actually. And words various words that I could use. And this was after, because I knew after the race was over, they were going to go to a shot of the winners. And you want it when you're doing TV, you want to know where that shot's going to be when the race is over. And you have to be prepared to that when you're doing a race on TV. The race is over, and then you have to look in your monitor to see what shot that director is going to. If it's a celebratory shot of the jockey, you go with that. I just saw a race yesterday, and so-and-so, I guess Johnny Velasquez, or no, Chris McCarron gives an affectionate tap on the neck to Bayacoa or Passiana as if to say good job. So I did that in 1 second, and I did that. I just saw that replay again yesterday because I was with Chris, and that was the shot that the director went to. But so here's for AP Valentine, and Nick Zito is going nuts as only Nick Zito can do. Go ahead, Nick. Go nuts. You've won the Kentucky Derby again. So that's the kind of preparation. And again, the preparation for that race, I don't know, 30 pages? More than that. On every possible type of situation that could arise. Issue of the favorites, particularly point given. Words I put down there. Stevens is keeping point given on the outside because that's where he likes to run. He's a little edgy, still on edge. He's shadowed by a persistent, imposing presence of point given just off the lead. So those are, again, just part of the whole process, yes.
Tom, why would you sometimes mention a jockey? I'm talking, not the Derby, but just like a regular Belmont race, like John Velasquez is supposed to strike.
I do that, first of all, this gets back to one of your questions earlier about the short field. You can start mentioning jockeys' names a lot more in a short field because, they're 50% of the component, most people tell you less, but those are the only two components out there. So, and why? And I wrote that down somewhere in my notes somewhere. Only use a jockey's name unless he's doing something. So if a jockey is doing something in particular something antithetical to what we think is going to happen, he's got him back today. And Johnny Velasquez has a big, strong hold of so-and-so. So that's part of the deal. And I think Trevor was probably the first guy that really started introducing jockeys into the equation, and so I stole that from him. We steal from each other all the time.
What if there's a significance about the jockey? Like I remember hearing you in the 99 Belmont when you said now Chris Antley is giving Charismatic his cue. You obviously knew, everybody practically in the racing community knew about the story of Chris Antley and how he was coming back from alcohol abuse and so on and so forth. If there's a significance about the rider, do you say that? Or
Somebody in the big races, Chris Antley was certainly a big story, and it turned out even a bigger story at the end of the race. And he was a figure that when you go into the Derby, it's a little bit different because I would do stuff at the Kentucky Derby. I would do stuff at Saratoga. The general tenor of my remarks at Saratoga would be different than they would be for Aqueduct. It's a different crowd. At Saratoga, they're not as sophisticated horse players as those people are at Aqueduct. They're not as seasoned horse players. So, I will say things at Saratoga that are obvious to a horse racing fan, not so obvious, okay, to a regular horse player. I would not do that at Aqueduct because they know more about I could just say, at Aqueduct sometimes I could just say, half 44-2, and they know exactly what I'm talking about. At Saratoga, I would have to say an astonishingly fast half mile of 44-2. Then, okay, because you just have to work on know who you're talking to. You know who your audience is, and that's very important. And again, this goes back to what I said in the beginning today. Know your audience and try to get them to listen to what it is that you're saying. Yes.
I've been listening to you for a long time. How did you feel when you were at the Meadowlands and you got a call to do the Breeders' Cup back in 1984 when you were announcing at the Meadowlands, and you had the chance to call the Breeders' Cup, back in 1984?
My first question was probably, breeders what? Yeah, well, absolutely delighted. Because I was, at that point in my life, I was known as Tom Who. I had never called, I called some races at 2 years at Hialeah, which at that time was still a bit of a major player, but, and the job was Marshall Cassidy's. They were just going to give it to Marshall, and he was going to be the announcer because he was the announcer in New York. And Pete Axthelm suggested to Arthur Watson, why don't you give this guy down in Hialeah a shot? And Arthur Watson goes, oh yeah. And Arthur was the president of NBC Sports. He owned harness horses, and he would come to the Meadowlands. He heard me, and went, why not? But I was, at that point in my life, I was a harness announcer.
Right.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Chris needs, our cameraman, Chris needs a time to recharge his batteries or something, 10 minutes?
Fine.